Jaxon Smith-Njigba is a interesting player. So if you know nothing about him, he was drafted in the first round by the Seattle Seahawks, and he was, many people's wide receiver number one. He was kind of in that stretch where four straight receivers were selected, and it went okay his rookie year. He was not a star right off the bat. He had, over 600 yards and 4 touchdowns. So, a solid season, but not a spectacular one. And I thought he's just an interesting player in general to discuss, as he is one of the, we'll get into the film and talk about it, but he is one of those guys where he's a, more of the slot receiver type that usually gets kind of considered as an insult of, oh, is he just a slot receiver? Can he win on the outside? And so that was kind of the thing we were wondering going into the season. There's pros and cons to that, right? The pro tends to be you're usually a pretty good slot receiver, which gives you a pretty high floor at the very least, but do you have the ceiling to be an elite receiver? Well, let's get into the NFL film and talk about how it went this year. So first, we can talk about what's easily been his career highlight up until this point. This was the play against Philadelphia. This was the game winner, which is a winning on the outside play, which is, the question with Smith-Njigba. Can he win go routes and one-on-one matchups in big spots? Well, the spot doesn't get any bigger than this. I mean, again, 3rd down and 10, you're down 4 points, so Seattle needs a play here. Drew Lock is going to take the snap, and he's going to fire it up in Smith-Njigba's direction, and there's definitely a bit of a window right here. Good job by Smith-Njigba to blow by James Bradberry, who admittedly people were blowing by pretty consistently last year, as Bradberry isn't exactly known for his speed in general, but last year was really an issue. But still, not to take away from Smith-Njigba, able to make the play, gets the game-winning touchdown. I mean, hey, that's still impressive to do, right? Being able to do that, not everyone was able to do that last year. So that's definitely something that you're excited about. And if you're a Seattle fan, this is what you look towards. It's not like that was happening consistently, but there was other ways Smith-Njigba was able to add value. Sometimes in more simple things like this, where it's, zone coverage, just kind of running this more over-the-middle route. These are plays that are still really important for the Seattle Seahawks, especially one, the kind of thing about the Seahawks, and part of why a lot of people, including myself, really like this selection by Seattle is they kind of have guys who can win on the outside. DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett are really good at winning down the field on the outside like that. So having a guy who maybe can do better work over the middle could add some real value. On this play, when it begins, you see Smith-Njigba showing off that slot receiver style, which, again, many people will use as a negative, but it's not strictly a negative. It certainly has its positive traits as well, and this is one of them, where you see how he's just not giving away where he's going. He could be going in any direction here. So when he does cut over the middle, Philadelphia was not able to read it until it was too late. Once again, James Bradberry not doing a lot of great stuff there. So, hey, beating up on James Bradberry in 2023, like I said, wasn't the most difficult thing in the world to do, but still you got to give him credit for being able to do it. I didn't expect this video to be so anti-James Bradberry. Sorry to James Bradberry if you're out there watching this video. Poor James Bradberry wanted to watch a Jaxon Smith-Njigba film study and now is getting roasted. My bad. But anyway, there's other things that Smith-Njigba did well last year when he wasn't playing James Bradberry. Something like this. Zone coverage play, again, just kind of this underneath type route, which is, still very valuable. It's a 3rd down and 6, so key moment. And a lot of times, slot receivers, where they really come through is on these situations, right? It's kind of the, DK Metcalf will be the guy who gets you a 50-yard touchdown. He'll be the guy who, you have to be, constantly aware of on every single down. But on a 3rd down and 6, usually it's the slot receivers or the number 3 receiver, whoever that ends up being, kind of being the key guy. Again, when this play begins, you see Smith-Njigba doing a really good job of kind of really selling as though he could be going towards the outside. So when he does cut over the middle, he gets a window. Really good job by Geno Smith as well, getting the ball over there quickly enough to get the 1st down. This is the type of stuff that they brought him in for. And, sometimes yards isn't the end-all be-all. Sometimes catches isn't the end-all be-all. It's often, about the importance of those yards and how, did you come through when they needed you to come through? Did you make the key play? Him getting an 8-yard completion here, You could say, an 8-yard completion, that's not a big deal. But in this specific scenario, it's a big deal. It's a huge deal. You're essentially keeping possession because of this play. That's massive. It's funny how we all acknowledge that slot receivers are really important on third downs, but also, and we all acknowledge that, possession is super important. A turnover is one of the worst things you can do in football. But this is essentially kind of like a turnover. It's, the field position isn't the same, but the, obviously possession is. So being able to keep the ball, it's a really important play, and having a guy who can do this is really valuable, even if he's not getting 1,000 yards. Now, I think there were some times when, I think if you want to talk negatives, I don't really have many negatives with Smith-Njigba. I think the only real negatives I would say is you maybe like a little more consistency out of these good plays. The good plays I'm showing you just didn't always happen, but I guess this is a negative you could look towards. It's going to be a wide receiver screen for Smith-Njigba. And as you see, it's not really going to work out. And I'm not saying this is a bad play or Smith-Njigba did anything wrong. That was good defense by Philadelphia. So, hey, showing a lot of, Philadelphia not playing great defense. Here is a good defensive play by the Eagles. But the reason why I want to show this play isn't to sit here and say, wow, Smith-Njigba sucks at wide receiver screens. It's more to say, at college, these were the kind of things he was great at. Get him the ball in his hands, he'll be spectacular. It didn't quite always work out that way in the NFL. I think that's reasonable to say. So as a whole, how do we feel about Jaxon Smith-Njigba? Has he been worth the top 20 pick? Probably. Probably worth the top 20 pick. I know that I think people tend to hope for more than the top 20 pick than what they got from Smith-Njigba, but honestly, that's probably fair value for, year one if you look historically, because you have to factor in the players who were bust and everything. Sure, there were better players selected after him, and even that, guys who can kind of do similar things. So I told you there was the 4 wide receivers selected in a row. He was the first of the 4. So immediately after was Quentin Johnston, who's probably been the worst of the 4 through 1 year. He was also my favorite coming out of college. Evaluating wide receivers is hard, but or at least I'm bad at it. One of the two. But, at least they didn't go there. You also have Zay Flowers and Jordan Addison, both who I would say were better than Smith-Njigba in year one. And that's going to kind of be maybe something that colors the covers how people feel about Smith-Njigba, because he hasn't been as good as players at the same position who were drafted pretty close after him. So, again, it's easy to do that. You can do that with every team at certain points. It is what it is. But, that's something that, again, is it fair to criticize the pick because of that? Maybe, but doesn't mean that he hasn't been a quality player. You could also look at, tight end Dalton Kincaid has also been a pretty good, over-the-middle type receiving threat for the Buffalo Bills in his first year. So, again, you can definitely look in that direction. And obviously, if you go further, Puka Nacua was drafted in round 5. They should have drafted him pick 20. Okay, well, no one thought he should have been picked that early, right? Easy to say that in hindsight. So how much of it saying that they should have drafted Zay Flowers is hindsight versus foresight? It's easy to say it now, but yeah, as a whole, I don't know. I think he's had a pretty quality rookie year, and I think you do want to see a little bit more from him, which could still happen. We could see maybe with him fully integrated into the offense, getting more shots to go downfield. If not, then they drafted still a quality slot receiver with pick 20. That's not the worst pick in the world, I would say. So either way, those are kind of my thoughts on Smith-Njigba. What are yours? Let me know in the comments below. Always love hearing from y'all, and of course, as always, thanks for watching.